Welcome everyone to another EOS Talk. Today is Saturday, July 21st, 2018. My name is Official Fuzzy and I hold weekly EOS Talks leveraging the world's first cross-chain value-add utility tokens to empower the team of community gurus and create initiatives and support the EOS ecosystem. So part of that is these very hangouts that we hold, which enable people to RSVP and become part of an open source agenda where they can RSVP, provide details about their projects, and as long as they follow the template, talk about their projects, their block producer proposals, their worker proposals in the EOS ecosystem. Now, with that said, we have a special guest tonight because we do generally have various things that go on in the ecosystem. We try to get guests on occasionally to talk about cool things that are going on within the ecosystem that is EOS. And tonight we have a special guest named Dominic Thomas, who is from the Werbly project, and he will be discussing the decentralized bank that they call Werbly. But first we have to cover, of course, some basics for everyday users and newbies to our community. So I don't want to make you guys wait too long, of course, but we have a couple things that we do every week. And for those of you who are new, you've never seen this, this is for you specifically. But for those of you who've seen it every week, if you don't share these places that we're talking about, ask yourself why you don't. Because these are things that we don't always have to tell people how important the technology we have is. If we tell them, it's hard to get a message across. But if we can show them, it can give a far stronger appeal. And it can be much more memorable and much clearer what we're trying to actually say to them about this technology. So if we can hit the ground running and show you some cool things that we already have today based on delegated proof of stake technology, you can then show this to other people. And that's going to be the easiest way to teach them what the true value of blockchains can be. Now, with that said, if you guys don't mind, let's go ahead and pull up the EOS Talk Forums. I just want to show everybody, these EOS Talk Forums are something that we've had recently. We had an event for, and these are forums that actually we have had for those of you who've been watching for a long time. We've had these forums for over a year now, right? And we've been running these forums to provide a blockchain-based, delegated proof of stake blockchain-based forum using the ChainBB architecture created by Gesta of Project Greymass. And we've been using this because we knew that there were going to be early stage difficulties that would arise within the EOS ecosystem, and that we also believe that it's good to have content that is based on the blockchain directly and that historical record right there. And during the time of EOS, there's a lot of it has been done in Telegram groups and centralized platforms, which are great. But a lot of these things, especially like governance, like ECAF, should be on, what I believe, should be on forums that are based on the blockchain. And they can, of course, be on the EOS ecosystem, or they could use EOS Talk or something like it. But we like to show this, and we've been running community initiatives through these forums for over a year. And as you can see the price there. You can actually join up, look at the price, because everybody cares about the price. And we won't get too far into the price right now, other than to say that Bitcoin is I'm hearing at a bottom, what a lot of people think are at a bottom, and it's looking more bullish. We'll see. This is crypto. You ever hear this is Sparta, where the guy kicks you into a hole? Just hold on to your tokens and be careful, unless you feel very smart about something, that you know something the world doesn't know. Be careful with this stuff, guys. But make sure that you focus on projects like these that are real and hitting the ground. Now, I'm sorry for those of you guys who normally like to hear about the price action. We want to get through, and I just really quickly want to start to talk really quick about blocktivity.info. And so you guys could pull that up. So blocktivity.info, we won't get too deep into it, but for those of you who are looking here, you will see the true value of blockchains based on the number of operations. It used to be transactions, but operations, because many operations can be held within a transaction. So they've gone more granular. They're now showing you that you can have, it shows you how many actual operations are happening on the blockchain at any given time. And as you can tell, BitShares is the number one right now. Then followed by that is Steam, right? And EOS is not very far behind, even though it's very, very young. And it's not very far behind two top competitors, right? Which is Bitcoin and Ethereum. But as you guys can see, even though Bitcoin and Ethereum have been around for a long time, they don't really match up very well to these depot chains in terms of scalability and usability. And that's that. Sorry guys. That is why we have the EOS Talk Forums. That's why we show you guys these things. That's why we have blocktivity.info. I just want to give you guys a special reminder that blocktivity.info is going to be open sourcing. So they're going to make it so the blocktivity.info site, all of the code is going to be available for other people to use. And this is, I think, perfect timing and great news, especially for those of us who are trying to give the true value of the blockchain to the world and showing them just how powerful this technology is, because we need to build a new internet, a new structure, right? And that's what we're doing, a new economy. And that's precisely what we're doing. So with that said, I would like to thank everybody for attending these Hangouts. I would like to ask everybody to give a hello to our special guest, Dominic Thomas, however, and move on to giving him a little bit of an opportunity to talk about his project, what they're planning, give kind of an introduction to himself in this project, and then maybe some community questions. Obviously, I will ask questions too, and we can take them from the audience, from the live streams. But we like to offer people who are doing cool things in the space an opportunity to discuss what's going on without having to pay money, without having to do anything but sign up, RSVP, show what they're doing, and open themselves up to questions from a community of nerds who really like this stuff. Give them a low barrier to entry. And with that said, thank you, Dominic, for joining us on the Discord tonight. And thank you for joining our community.
Thanks for the opportunity, Fuzzy. Appreciate it.
Well, let's go ahead and get into what started your journey into crypto. I know it's not quite Warbly centric yet, but we do have a couple extra minutes here that we've added on to the Hangouts recently. So if you could give us a little bit of an idea, what got you interested in crypto? Kind of give us your story in the crypto world.
Yeah, sure. So I came across Bitcoin back in 2010. Funny enough, my dad's a big video gamer. He's in his late 60s now, but I was helping him build a computer, and I got really into building machines, and I was on all these gaming forums, talking all the hardcore, and they started talking about mining Bitcoin. So I did a little bit of research. I ran across Bitcoin Talk, and I was blown away. I couldn't believe it. I read the original white paper. I thought it was great. This was right after the first like major bump, I believe, that Gox had topped out at about $30. It was down to about 5 or something, and I thought it was great. So I started building in Bitcoins. I did that until like late 2012, just as the ASICs were coming in. I wasn't sure about the ASICs. Kind of got out of it. Life happened. And then about a year ago, I started studying programming. I had been in medicine for a while. I knew I wanted to switch careers, get more involved in tech, and I started looking at blockchain again, and I was just blown away by how much it happened. All the stuff going on with the programmable blockchains and Ethereum and, Lisk and Stratus and Steemit and all this stuff. And so that was last summer. And I started looking around, seeing if I could get involved in projects, put my business experience to use. And then sometime around January, got started with the crew over at Werbly, and we've been working on it for most of this year.
So you got into it early, really early. That's like almost right after it was created. These were back in the days when Bitcoin was what? Probably 3 cents or maybe 15 cents, somewhere around that area. 2010, it was still pretty low, if I recall correctly.
Yeah, I think it was around a couple bucks.
Was it?
Got into it. Yeah, it was there. I think it was late 2010 for me. I remember it being around $3 to $5. I don't know. Definitely wasn't too high. I probably mined about 3,500, 4,000 Bitcoins. No, I didn't keep them. I wish I did. I wouldn't need any funding.
Yeah.
But, I made some money. I had a good time. I learned a little bit about Linux. And I felt like that would eventually change the world.
And started down this road. And obviously, when you came back, you guys fell into delegated proof of stake. How did that happen? Do you mind if I delve into that?
Yeah, so I ran across Steemit last year when I was just kind of looking around at different aspects of blockchain. I definitely was impressed by the speed and by the work Dana was doing, and I was certainly aware of BitShares. And when I heard about EOS, I was basically hooked.
Yeah. So would you say that it was the use cases and actually using it and seeing it, like feeling it, that kind of like really sank it in for you, or did it literally just take a split second of seeing it?
No, it was definitely the use cases. Seeing Steemit in action, something that was actually working on blockchain that wasn't theoretical, knowing the history of BitShares and what that had been able to do, and then hearing about the governance aspect of EOS, it's always be important for mainstream adoption.
So you guys decided upon this consensus model to create Warbly, right? If you don't mind, I would like to ask you to start introducing that, if you could, a little bit to the newbies, and then maybe if you want to go a little bit lower level. But just from a high view at first, could you describe Warbly, kind of give the introduction to it and how it all started?
Warbly is a financial service built around. What we want to do is take blockchain, add a layer of compliance at the user account level so that all that stuff's taken care of. There's compliance with our block producers, compliance with our governance. So everything's all set. If a developer wants to come on in, they really don't have to worry about that stuff. They can focus on the technical aspects of their application, making sure the app does what to do, and they know that they're on a network that will meet all of the regulatory aspects in whatever jurisdiction they're in. Specifically, that the user accounts themselves at a core level will go through what's called AML KYC and all of that stuff. So, expect there to build applications. And the other major part of it is we knew that there were fintech blockchains out there like Corda, but those are all permission, walled garden, blockchain as a service. They're really not accessible to your sort of, you're just regular entrepreneur, somebody who doesn't have millions and just wants to build an app and has a great idea. And we wanted there to be something in between that, something that's, but it's open for the regular person to just create.
So what would you say would be the difference between Warbly and something like BitShares or EOS? because you guys are going to have your own chain, right? So some people would probably want to know, why would you choose not to run on those two chains or something to that effect?
Right. So definitely pick EOS for the governance, the transaction speed, and specifically the fact that you can recover user accounts, because that's a real critical aspect of compliance. Able to meet compliance standards if one of your users loses their private keys, for example, and suddenly you say, well, there's no access to your money. That's not going to pass muster with any compliance body in the world. The financial application would be responsible for replacing those funds. So that was a big aspect of choosing EOS specifically. Now, the reason why we're not launching on mainnet is that we can't enforce through all of the things that would be required for the chain to meet compliance on a public blockchain. Effectively, we'd have to set forth these compliance rules and impose them on the public community. And we really don't think that's fair. And even if the public community was for it, we'd have to, once everybody puts their time and energy into building these applications, that it would stay that way.
Yeah, it's an interesting thing because we always knew that delegated proof of stake chains especially would be used for multiple different reasons, like public and private chains, right? We've heard this before.
Yeah, so I think in our case, it's trying to be a hybrid. Some initial rules that need to be imposed to meet compliance, but the conceptual model that to our slowly but surely it's turned over to the community once that.
Now, have you guys considered anything in terms of forming a body within the community itself to, let's say, to help guide the SEC and the IRS and all these compliance bodies on?
That's actually pretty interesting in that. So we run the EOS DC Maryland VA meetup over in the region. I live in the area, and the purpose of the meetup is to really start to try to connect to some of those folks inside the Beltway, as they call it. Had people from the Government Blockchain Association here in the States join our meetups, and we're having conversations with them about making those connections.
And you guys are going to, did you say you're going to be making those connections?
So we're starting to make those connections within lobbying groups in the area, trying to find stakeholders that are aligned with, so that we can sort of build a coalition and start to have some influence within some of these governing bodies, at least in the U.S.
Yeah, because it's very interesting. You guys have formed a foundation, correct? And the foundation is going to have board members essentially elected by the community.
Yes, that's the longer term vision, is to eventually, once we get all of our governance in place, have the community elect the board, and then the board is in charge of the executives of the foundation, who are in charge of the maintenance of the network, business development, compliance, all of those various things.
And this is going to be something where you guys are trying to offer the ability to essentially connect it, from what I understand, to your bank account, to have it where crypto and cash are represented right there for you.
Yes, absolutely. So the after the launch of the network, which we expect to happen on September 1st, we'll be doing our airdrop on mainnet and get the network up and running with our block producers. It'll begin the process of building the applications to effectively form a bank that will be a crypto to fiat gateway that's compliant.
And you're saying this is in America, right? So this is something that is important to recognize as well, because if you I've heard the saying plenty of times, and I'm sure many of you have as well. If you can get it by in America from the regulations in America, you can pretty much get it by anywhere, right? So did he just turn Matrix on us? Did you hear him just go?
Sorry about that. Exactly as you're saying, if it passes muster in the U.S., it passes muster pretty much anywhere.
Oh, there we go. Yeah, I thought you were like Neo in the Matrix there for a second. Got taken. Thank God, Dominic. Thank
Not
God
yet.
that was it's probably just Comcast. But anyway, first off, does anybody else have any other questions? Because I will ask them for quite a long time if you guys don't budge in. And I want this to be for the community as well, for any of you guys who are interested in these projects. Because here's the thing, we started Beyond Bitcoin in the very early days, right? And Beyond Bitcoin has been waiting for moments when all these different delegated proof of stake chains and chains that are scalable would come out and actually work and be adopted. So this is what I want to cover. These are the things that I love. So anybody else here who's thinking the same way, which I'm pretty sure it's all of you guys if you're here, these are the opportunities to ask the questions that maybe you otherwise might never be able to ask.
Well, I mean, I'm going through the white paper now, and actually scrolling through it in the stream as well. And I know a lot of people eventually will start asking about token distributions and how that's going to work and what they're for on your platform as a financial service platform. I saw you had the 500 million token supply WBI for the ticker. Are they drop-in EOS holders even though you're having your own chain? What are they used for within your platform?
Yeah, so we new white paper soon. The website's actually in process of over the course of this evening. We've got a new website coming up. So we adjusted our token economics a little bit. Originally, we had a supply of 500 million, and we were going to drop a portion on mainnet. We reworked our token economics where the new supply is 2.5 billion, but we're dropping 1 billion tokens on EOS mainnet.
Okay, and that's based on Genesis snapshot or a different snapshot?
Yeah, it'll be different. We're going to take a snapshot here sometime. We don't know exactly between now and September 1st.
Okay, so current holders. Okay.
Ninja snapshot.
Yeah, we want to include everybody who's currently involved at the time of our launch effectively. We thought that was the fairest way to do it.
Now, out of curiosity, along with this point that you just brought up, you are going to need to do a snapshot of the chain. Is that going to cost anything for you guys to execute these snapshots? And is the RAM issue going to come into play for you guys at all?
I don't think so. Not as far as the snapshot, is my understanding. But one of the reasons that we're doing our airdrop a little differently. So, for example, one way to do it would be to talk to the various development teams that have produced wallets for mainnet, right? Like Graymass and Scatter and some of these other folks, and get them to provide the functionality to hold another token from but we wanted to do it a little differently because we didn't want to deal with the RAM issue and all the costs with doing an airdrop through mainnet. So we're taking the snapshot, and we're actually going to be creating a portal, and people are going to register with their EOS mainnet public key. We'll have the snapshot in the database, their holdings are at the time of the snapshot, and then we'll airdrop the appropriate tokens, but they'll automatically have an account on our chain through that process.
Interesting, because you guys will just hit on a full node or something like that to get the data that you need, and then essentially store it that way.
Exactly. Because we just didn't, I mean, I think someone said a few weeks ago it was almost 130K to do an airdrop on mainnet.
Yeah, and these are some of the things that I keep coming up with, like being like, oh my God, this is horrible. But it's great to think how many people are coming up with pretty important solutions that it makes total sense once I hear it. So I'm glad that you guys came up with that, actually. Because one of the things that I think a lot of people are complaining about and concerned about, actually, is the cost of doing a share drop. Of course, that is also in tokens on the actual EOS chain too, which is slightly different for you guys since it's another chain. So that's another. But it's very interesting to hear how this is playing out, and I was kind of curious because, let's face it, the whole RAM thing is kind of at the crux of a lot of questions right now for some of those things, and they're trying. Of course, it's early days and there's volatility in it and everything. So it's still too soon to see, but I like to ask the question because it's so, you guys are building a project. It's kind of nice to see what people are doing to get around certain things like that. Oh, good question, John Scott. So we hold our private keys, or does Warbly?
No, we're never going to be touching your private keys. So we'll be doing that. My understanding of the way it'll work is we're planning on, we've already been in contact with NS James. We're going to effectively fork it, bring it over to our chain. And so the private keys will be on a local machine, not the CTO, but that's my understanding how it is, but we're definitely not touching your private keys.
Yeah, I thought I heard that there was an option to have your keys there, but it wasn't necessary. It was like optional. I'm not positive either. That's just what I read. So I might be reading something. We are in crypto.
Right. The thing is that when we eventually create this financial institution, we already have a partner who's providing digital asset insurance. So if you want us to be your custodian and you want us to hold your private keys, so maybe we have a very new user who wants to carry crypto balances in the bank. At that point, if you want us to do that for you and you want to use the insurance to ensure you'll have that option, but we'll always make it possible to hold their own private keys.
Hi, Dominic. I'm looking at your website now, and it seems like there's a couple of different products like Gamma Bank, Qubit X, and then Warbly as, I guess, the umbrella company. Can you talk about these different components?
Yeah, absolutely. So Warbly is really the network, right? That's the chain. And what Warbly is this EOS fork that's built around financial compliance. The AML KYC, for example, which is the major aspect of financial compliance globally, will be built into the user account. When you sign up for your account, once we add the AML KYC, which we're doing a partner that will work, you'll go through that process. Apparently it takes about 90 seconds, and then your account will be fully verified. That data will be in your account, so you'll be able to use it any way you want. And the partner we chose, it actually allows you to personal privacy settings so that the app know exactly what you want. So you don't have to automatically release your entire profile. Let's say for this particular DApp, it's a peer-to-peer insurance DApp, right? And all you need to do is verify your identity, right? To make sure that you're who you say you are, and that's that DApp's requirement. So then you don't have to give them all the rest of your information that you've put into your AML KYC profile. And you're storing that information in your user, your private keys. So it's not, it's in the blockchain, but we don't have access to it at Warbly, and the AML KYC provider doesn't have access to it either. Then we have Gamma Bank as well, financial services institution that we want to create. So that's kind of our first. So the Warbly Foundation is in charge of the network, and then we're going to be seeding Gamma Bank with tokens from the Worbly network. We'll be hiring a team of financial experts to take charge of that. We have the business plans. We have a white paper that we're working on for that. We're actually redoing it. It's been done for a while, but we're in the process of redoing it. And then we'll be seeking funding for that application to build the bank. And then that will be its own separate entity. It'll act as a DApp on the network. And then we have QubitX, which is a trading platform partner that we've already signed up. They've got their beta right now for their trading platform that they're testing, and they will be one of the first dApps to launch on the chain.
Cool. All sounds like win-win-win.
So the gist of this is that there'll be a process for anyone who wants to launch a dApp. Now, we're not going to act as gatekeepers per se, like, we don't like you, you can't launch your dApp, or, you're a competitor of an existing network. We're not going to have this type of traditional, we'll say, corporate walled garden type approach. You're just going to need to go through a standard process that says your dApp meets compliance and you agree to continue to meet the compliance standards of the chain. So it'll be almost like an initial auditing process that you'll go through. If you, let's say, you come across Worbly, you've got a financial dApp, you want to launch it on the chain, there'll be a form, you'll fill it out, X, Y, and Z, you'll check your boxes. If you meet the compliance standards, great. You're free to do whatever you want.
So transaction costs will be like EOS then, with RAM and bandwidth and things?
No, now we're doing RAM much differently. We are working on a formula. We're going to put RAM back into our token, kind of like the initial concept. Sorry, we're a business first blockchain. So the concept is we want to keep RAM basically as low priced as possible. We want to take the speculation out of it. We only want the block producers to be rewarded because they're providing the RAM to the network appropriately. So that comes from the Worbly tokens they get, but no one's going to be able to sell RAM. And we have a very interesting model. So we have this thing in our chain that's called our usage algorithm. And when you stake, so let's say you are deploying a dApp on our chain and you're going to stake 10,000 Worbly tokens, and that's going to give you access to compute power. It's going to give you access to RAM. It's going to give you access to bandwidth. When you do that, you actually get staking rewards because we want to reward people for building on chain, right? We want them to be able to sort of stay with the inflation of the chain because they've deployed a dApp. They're providing value for the network. So when they do that, they're going to get staking rewards. In that usage algorithm, though, we're going to have an algorithm that's going to constantly be monitoring for how much of each resource you're using. So how much bandwidth you're using, how much compute power, and how much RAM. Whatever you're not using, you're actually going to get credits for. So let's say you have a dApp that uses a lot of bandwidth, right? You've got a ton of users. You've got 100,000 users. It's great, and you're using a lot of bandwidth, and you're using, 10% of your stake tokens worth of CPU and 30% of your RAM. That's 70% of the RAM going to get credited to you, but then made available to the network for another dApp that might need more RAM, right? And it maybe isn't using as much bandwidth or CPU or whatever. So we're working on creating a sort of a proprietary algorithm so that we can keep the RAM, the bandwidth, the CPU, all of the network resources inside the token, take the speculation out of it, and drive costs for deploying a dApp down. The token price we want to rise because we've got users, because there's demand, because our token's going to be used in transactions for every dApp in the network. That's going to be sort of the core token that's underlying it. Not that a dApp can't, just like on mainnet, build its own token for the application, but the Worbly token will be used in the background on all the transactions on the network.
Great question. Do you mind if I piggyback on that a little bit and ask, Have you guys been talking at all about the inter-blockchain communication? I mean, you have been. So why don't you discuss a little bit your thoughts and what you guys have discussed about the IBC or inter-blockchain communication with Warbler?
Yeah, so that was a big deal for us. And again, early on when we were looking at EOS, that's what really excited us and helped us understand that this could be viable, and that we could still be interacting with all the other, specifically mainnet, but we also assumed there'd be potentially other forks. And so, you and I, Fuzzy, have talked about this a lot, but, I see EOS as a bunch of galaxies forming a universe.
Yeah.
In the long run. And so we're part of a Telegram IBC channel for EOS, which I know you're well aware of. And as soon as we get the network off the ground, we plan on putting development resources towards, the groups that are working on IBC and contributing to create that functionality as soon as possible.
Yeah, I think that this is one of those things where we often discuss how there's these tribes in crypto. And I think it's largely because there isn't an easy way of exchanging crypto between the communities, right? There are a couple that exist and all that stuff, but it's not really what it could be, right? We can build essentially highways between cities now. And you can have big cities that are customized and good and really good at one thing, and their laws are actually like almost tailored to this. And you have all this value there because they fulfill a certain niche, and they're spec'd out for that specifically. And there's a super highway from that one to the other one. Yeah, we have talked about it. Sorry. Yeah, but these are the types of value propositions that I think that a lot of people don't quite realize that is going to be possible. I'm not saying that it's going to be easy, but I think that there are people out there who are going to find solutions for this that work. I think the ones that actually work today between Bitcoin and other blockchains would be even if they're not the perfect solutions at present, would still be a solid foundation for some of this stuff. Side chains even would be potentially very powerful. Oh, Akron, go ahead and ask your question, man. I'll go ahead and, I can ask it for you, but. Akron says, so you essentially cap based on bandwidth, but allow unutilized resources to subsidize the market and automatically reward for the users for it. No problem, Akron. I have a voice all the time on these things. Of course. So there's one more question that I would like to bring up, and there's going to be a lot of jurisdictions, right? How would you say, like, obviously if it works in America, it's going to work most places, but there might be some outliers due to the fact that, cultures and histories are different in different places, and you never know how the law was adopted in certain places. I mean, for God's sake, there are some places where you can't tie a crocodile to a what do you call them on the side of the street where the fire hydrants, right? What happens in those special cases for groups of people who want to use Wordly?
Well, I think that, like as you said, we're hoping that there's going to be, a coded solution to interact long term. We also, again, we invite, competition, competitiveness on the chain, people deploying their own solutions, competing with whatever it is that we choose to incubate and create ourselves, things that, we want to, put on our own chain. So, sorry, I'm not getting any volume here, it sounds like.
Hey, you're okay, man. People are just letting you know so everybody can hear you a little bit better. That's all.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on with my rig. I just had to restart Discord to get in.
It's like I think that Compound said it's the CIA. He would know. Joke, guys, joke.
Okay. Maybe. You never know. We're going to need that decentralized internet soon, too, I think, to go with it.
Okay, well, I'll say this. Anybody have any questions or comments regarding the project itself before I start asking a little bit about? Okay, so I don't see anything. Okay, so with regard to the tokens, how does somebody get a hold of Orbly tokens if they want to participate in it? How would they go about doing that right now?
So right now we did some private funding. We've taken the philosophy that, you know, these ICOs that are raising 20, 30, 40 million dollars before they build something just doesn't make a lot of sense. And if you're really built around compliance and you're going to be working by its very nature, until you have a product that's launched and working, you really can't do an ICO legally without being classified as a security. So we've had some private investment, small private investment round right now that's function providing some funding for marketing. So if anybody's interested, you can contact us directly and we can give you the details on that. And then, of course, September 1st will be the airdrop to the EOS mainnet, and then we'll immediately be available within the next few weeks on somewhere around 4 to 5 exchanges, a couple of DEXs, a couple of smaller exchanges, and then we'll be targeting a few bigger exchanges that we're talking to. And so we just want to create a market for the token straight away. People will be able to participate and buy if they're interested.
So this is during right now, it's essentially the pre-sale round. And people can get in very early, essentially. But this would be considered essentially the quote unquote riskiest time. Would you say that that's what most people would say about businesses early on?
Sure. Yeah, it's similar to like a seed round, you know. So it's definitely riskier, but you know, it's also
You're not asking for millions of dollars. I think that this is it's just important to recognize what you're saying is like you're having multiple moments when you're taking funding and you're not taking a large portion at first because it's going to enable you to build that product and show it off before you start asking for more, right? Is there anything that you would like to talk about in specificity, yeah, you know what I mean, specificity, regarding the roadmap for the next, year ahead?
Yeah, so we're working on network launch will be September 1st. The AML KYC integration will happen in the next few months. Then we're expecting at the beginning of 2019 to start launching some of the applications that'll compose the bank. And I know there was a user question kind of earlier about, you know, how do we know you don't just sort of become another one of these centralized, you know, banking situations where user accounts can get frozen and all of those things. And we have a very unique approach to the way we're going to create the bank. It's really going to be a collection of individual dApps. It's not going to be one single entity. And so we're really working towards that decentralized aspect whereby, you know, the only way that you're going to have a problem is because you're misusing the system and doing something straight up illegal.
Yeah, I think it's important to recognize that there's going to be kind of like layers of access in terms of blockchains, and I think that there are going to be public chains, and then there are going to be chains that are more strict in terms of what you can do, but actually offering a lot of other things that might come along with that, right? Even certain things like proprietary algorithms might be something that philosophically a lot of people might be against, but I have a hard time saying that it would be a good idea to shut them out, right? I look at it like flavors of Linux, and you were talking earlier in the very beginning about Linux, and all these different flavors of Linux. There's somebody out there who loves it, and that's their favorite because it offers certain things that they need that other ones don't necessarily offer, or don't offer in the way that that they might always want, right? So you have your own flavor a lot of the time. They're definitely the most popular ones, but this is, I think, an interesting take on it, and I think it'll be very interesting to see how a decentralized community lives within the confines, or what do we say? I don't want to say confines, because there are reasons to have these rules on chains to reach mass adoption, I think. So it's going to be very interesting, though, I think, walking that line. And I'm glad that the person asked the question earlier, that tough question, because to be honest with you, I'm taking such an approach to it that I have that fear, but I think that we are going to see this entire spectrum kind of grow out on its own, despite what we do. So I want to cover them all and see if I'm wrong about certain things, right about certain things. And when certain things are obvious, I think we discuss them, but it's important that people bring up those questions to you, I think. With that said, is there anything specific that you'd like to bring up regarding this, or anything else before we move on to? I think there's one part that I missed with Power Picks here early on in the beginning.
I didn't have anything in particular.
How would anybody? Are you guys still going to be taking in tokens in a pre-sale round? Like right now, people can reach out to you about.
Yes, people can reach out directly. We're just doing it in a private sale. It's the only compliant way for us to do it at this stage of the game.
Are you allowed to give any details on the private sale, or is it something that's under wraps?
No, we can talk about it. We're only raising 500K. We're coming near the end of the sale at this point. We're charging 1 cent is our existing token price.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. And there's one thing that I would like to say. That you guys are doing, a lot of things that are going to be important. I think somebody mentioned in here, are you going to compete with Coinbase? And that's a good question, right? I think that it's something that if Coinbase, nothing against Coinbase, but if there were a way of making it more of a DAC, it would be a very interesting thing to see. And we would also know that there's a lot more transparency there than there might be on something like Coinbase, for the end user at least, right?
Yeah, absolutely. We hope that we'll be creating something that'll be competitive with that. The reason why we're doing it as a bunch of individual dApps instead of having all the functionality in kind of either one dApp or one company is that we expect there to be that level of transparency. We expect that the community is going to have a say in the running of the financial institution, in the holding the people who are in positions of authority in the financial institution accountable, all of these various things. We want to decentralize as much as possible, but from our research and our experience on the team, you can't start decentralized. You have to take that intermediate step. Start with things like transparency and these other important things that we can do, get the community engaged, get the business off the ground, and then we can slowly but surely decentralize as much as possible. One of the things we're working on and talking with some regulators in the US is creating a new corporate designation, because that's really the first step. I mean, we essentially need a DAC corporate entity in the United States.
Yeah, I would. Dan Robles, are you able to talk real quick?
Yeah, I'm right here.
Do you mind telling? I murdered what you said to me a while back, but it was so perfectly stated that I think that it's important if you could bring it up in the context of this before we move on to the community initiatives updates, and maybe talking a little bit with Dominic about doing one for Warbly. But could you talk a little bit about the point that you made to me about the dragon?
Oh, yeah, walking into the eye of the dragon.
Yeah, essentially you have to be careful, right?
Well, yeah. So what happens is, in our case, for example, the IEBC, we're developing co-engineers, which is decentralizing the engineering profession. These are all the people who do the infrastructure, roads, bridges, highways, etc. It's a very, very powerful idea. The problem is that, you're taking the power away from somebody else, and they're not going to go along nicely, or you can't assume that they're going to go along nicely. So what you have to do is be real careful about how you approach it, and try to get. So you got to find your point of entry into this mainstream. And what we're doing is we're, I guess the analogy is like a Trojan horse. You gotta let them in. They have to let you in the front door, and then once you're there, you can infect them, and then it slowly changes over time. So it's not this big radical, we're going against you, let's fight to the finish. You have to be really tactful about it. And that's all I was saying. And walking into the eye of the dragon, like engineering, that's really dangerous in many ways. Nobody's ever done it. So this is what we're trying to do. I'm not sure exactly who Warbly is moving against or on, but our approach has been dominated a lot by those realities.
Dominic, do you have anything to say in response to that?
Yeah, I mean, I completely understand. I mean, I guess, we're challenging the existing financial structure in a way, but again, I'd say that we're trying to do it in a more integrative approach. I mean, I guess the way we're looking at it is kind of like what the internet originally did to music, right? We had Napster, and we had these peer-to-peer file sharing platforms where all of a sudden everybody just started sharing music, and it was free, and it completely, it took the
Paradigm
music industry. Yeah, and it forced them to change, right? And I mean, and that's what we got. And we got freedoms like paying for individual songs and not having to download albums. There's platforms now where artists can distribute their music without necessarily having to sign on a label. It's certainly much easier than it ever has been. And so we're not naive enough to think that there's going to be some global crumbling of the banking infrastructure, but we think that we can innovate enough that we can force a change.
Yeah, okay, force. That's a problem. That word is a real big problem. Big red flag. You can't force these guys. You have to do it like what's that martial art where you use your own force against them. You can't. You're not going to force them. So the thing that we're doing is we're not going at it in terms of land, labor, and capital. We're going to upset your capital structure. We're going at it in terms of risk. We're going to remove risk. So this becomes a risk arbitrage play instead of a financial arbitrage play. And we're finding that that's much more palatable. People don't see a threat to it at all. It doesn't activate all their little antigens and get them all freaked out about stuff. That we're going to just remove risk from the system. And they say, well, that's good. Removing systemic risk is what we all need. We got to get rid of some of this volatility. We have to, for this stuff to become a universal form of currency. We got to get rid of the volatility. So if you take the play on risk, and you're probably pretty close to it already, just maybe swap a few words around, then maybe that'll help you find partners and at least find at least.
Actually, in Genesis, I will just jump in real quick because they're pretty much set on all that. And the cool thing about it is actually that they're at that point where it's one of those things where I kind of liked it where, like you said, let them in the door. And I kind of think of it as like you're selling candy bars and they let you in the door and you sold them a candy bar and they're like, oh, I love these candy bars. Can I have more of them? Less than walking into the dragon's den and slaying it, because at the end, you want the dragon to love you and take you on flights. But also have it where everybody else is going, oh, the dragon, we all like hang out and he lights fires for us. And there's the incentives are more aligned now. The dragon doesn't feel like he needs to hoard anymore. And we all are bountiful. And we're, you know what I mean? Like everything leads to dragons power picks, especially when you grow up playing with dragons, right? But
well, I guess I'll say, yeah, you're absolutely correct. Force is a strong word. I mean, I guess I'm thinking of force as like why would you make a different choice? The technology's there. They've made this easier. You're exactly right. We feel that our play will be that we can show existing institutions that we can reduce their risk. We can reduce their risk because we have better security. We can reduce their risk because we can track with algorithms and machine learning the truly nefarious actors that might be doing things like terrorist financing, money laundering, by the fact that blockchain's recording everything, and we can look at this. We can do it anonymously, sort of. It's not that we're going to be tracking individual users, but we can look at the chain as a whole, and we can take technology to look for some of these patterns. We can get the cost down. We can get the costs of lending and micro lending to the underbanked and unbanked. These people are not getting access to banking right now because they're seen as too high of a risk. We think we can lower that risk so that folks that are in these situations are actually become viable customers. So I agree. We're really not conceptually, we're not looking at this aggressive thing. We're not looking at it like, yeah, we're going to smash the banks and they're going to come crawling to us. We're not that naive, and we don't think that that's the best way to do it anyway. It's sort of a violent approach, and that's absolutely not what we're doing. We're trying to create this level of innovation. We've talked internally often about that we'd love to be approached by a Bank of America or a JP Morgan Chase or Wells Fargo to open a digital branch on our chain.
So in order to address risk, you have to answer three very simple questions. They're actually very simple, but the discipline that you're going to need to take in order to answer those questions might be the hard part. The first one is you have to be able to identify the risk exposure. So you know what the risk exposure are, all the risk exposures. Then you have to come up with a way to estimate the likelihood that that risk exposure will manifest. And that's where you're going to have to get some math in there, some actuarial math. And the third thing you're going to need is the ability to estimate or assess the consequences in the event should that risk occur. So, there's a little discipline to it. They're really simple things. All those numbers are easy to get, but there's going to be some discipline where every time you say, I'm going to reduce the risk, you have to follow up with those three quantities. And that's going to just save you a ton of effort if you can go in that direction.
Yeah, absolutely. And we've brought on a team member and really a strong business partner. His name is Darren Swords, and he has a lot of background in insurance and risk and actuarial work, and that's exactly what we're asking him to address for us. Again, one of the things we can do with decentralized systems is potentially distribute risk in ways that wasn't previously available. So, for example, one of the dApps we expect to launch on our chain that's in development is a peer-to-peer insurance dApp.
You guys fell off. I can't hear you.
while he's fixing his mic, these are one of the things, anybody who looks back on it, that Dan was talking about in the very early days was peer-to-peer insurance. I think that all these things are very important. It'll be very interesting to see, will these dApps be open source? That would be another question that I would have.
There's can I make one more question? Can I make one more?
Of course. I just want to make sure that Dominic is able to. Oh wow, that's great, Dominic. That's great, man. Yep.
Yeah. Sorry about the mic. I don't know if you can hear me.
No, it's okay. PowerPix was actually just bringing up his early mutual aid society videos. That was the first use case that he discussed, or one of the first use cases that he discussed, actually, with this technology. But go ahead. Are you back, Tom?
Yeah, I'm here. I probably need to drop off in a minute or two. So definitely want to say thank you for giving us an opportunity to talk about the project. And, I'm happy to answer any questions if people want to contact me. My email is Dominic, DOMENIC, @worbli.io, WORBLI.io. And the website's www.worbli.io. We'll have a new website up here. It might be live now. It'll certainly be live by tomorrow. And, we're excited to work with the greater EOS community. We're as big of fans as EOS as you are, Fuzzy, and that's part of how you and I sort of started talking and getting involved. But, we're rooting for all the various communities that we see forming, and we're really excited about where we think this is going.
Yeah, it's going to be very interesting to watch as all of these things come together. And like you said, I think actually it was in one of the talks that you guys have already had. You're there to focus on helping the entire ecosystem, right? And I think when all these ships recognize that if they make an improvement on one of them and it works for certain special instances or for generalized instances, whatever makes things more efficient, all of these other ones can adopt it, then we have something really powerful. And I think that, like you said, we don't necessarily need to use the word force, but let's face it, when you have no other option but the horse and buggy or a Lambo, which one do you ride in? With that said, thank you very much. And before we move on, I would just like to, before we close off tonight, I did forget PowerPix, and feel free, of course, in the future to knock on my head whenever this happens. But we have a community initiative that we did this past week that I think is important to give an update on. If you'd like to cover the community initiatives.
Point. Sure. Yeah, this week we had a tokens for tweet challenge that we put. Well, we had an EOS Talk fan art one, which finished up, and tomorrow we'll have a post that I go up for the winners in that contest. So if you did enter in that art challenge, keep on the look for that. We'll do the winners post tomorrow. But one of the other challenges we did during our week, which was a tokens for tweet challenges, which was kind of an original one. We haven't done this one before, and this was basically targeting High Fidelity, which is a blockchain-based virtual reality company, kind of like the old Second Life. And we just did a tokens for tweet to basically track them down and get them to come over to EOS Talk to actually join us as a guest. And we did get some initial responses from them to contact them via email and things like that from their Twitter feed. So I did do that. I think some other people might have as well. So we're going to keep the pressure on them. And this week, like Fuzzy had mentioned before, that we might follow up with a tokens for email campaign after this, since they did kind of open that method of communication with them. We might go ahead and do that as well as some other art contests during the week. I know Crazy Krista is going to spearhead an EOS art challenge this week, which is not for creating artwork. I mean, you could if you wanted to, but it'll be more about finding EOS-based artwork that's already been created, either on the internet, from our past challenges. And we're trying to basically stock up the image drive that we have for EOSTalk.io, so people will have a centralized place to come and find all the artwork that they want for it. We actually have it, I have it on screen here now for EOSTalk.io. We have kind of a resource center for images, infographics, presentations, videos, and white paper information. So we're going to start filling these up with content. So we'll do a lot of community initiatives to have you guys in our community go out there for us and help bring all this content to us into this one centralized resource on EOS Talk, and you'll be rewarded for that. So be on the lookout for those challenges coming this week and the weeks following that. And you know, like Fuzzy mentioned before, this is an important one with high fidelity, so we will keep on this, tokens for tweet, and also the email coming up behind that one to actually bring them in. It is kind of an important project that's out there. I know Troy, EOS Cafe, is out there. He's actually on high fidelity. He's using that. I think he's planning to build basically a virtual EOS Cafe on high fidelity. So I'm in there myself. I did create an account, downloaded it, and get started. So we're going to keep on that one. And Fuzz, that's basically what we have going on for now, and we'll get more stuff going on Monday.
Thanks, man. And I want to let everybody know, and maybe it was actually best that I could just tell you, everybody, I intentionally had you do that. Because I want to make sure that everybody knows that these are the types of events that enable us to do further things for the community, like Warbly and Cepheos and Urio and Ono, and we've covered a lot already in the past year, right? There's a lot of cool stuff coming along in the world beyond Bitcoin. But you guys are the ones who really make this. You guys are the lifeblood, right? We get together every week and we talk about things of importance. We teach people the basics about certain things, keep them up to date on general things that are going on in the ecosystem, and connect them up with people like Dominic here, so they can give information about the risks they're taking and the things that they're trying to build, and let you guys ask questions that you feel are important, and even ask questions, as you can see, that I don't ask, that I haven't thought of. This is a really powerful thing. So I want to thank all of you guys for participating in that. But I also want to let you guys know these events are really something that we intend on making as easy as possible for you guys to participate in. So consider, if you're not running in these events, doing so. And if you like Warbly, you'll have an opportunity in the future to do something for them. And with that said, thank you guys for having this hangout with me tonight. Thank you to Dominic for joining up. Thank you to PowerPix and all of the people who stream these, because we have multiple people streaming. This is how we get the message out. And it might not always be flashy and talking about Lambos and how much money you're going to make, but this is stuff that we can't ignore. We have to have the discussions about it, and we have to bring people like you guys who care about it together around a round tables to talk about it. So that's what we aim to do. And thank you for those of you guys who see that vision, because you're helping us build the future for some of this stuff, right? With that said, thank you very much, and let's see you guys next week and get on with the after party.